So everybody's seen those old E3 images from past E3s, the iconic image, people walking down a hallway. On the left, the PlayStation area. On the right, the Xbox area. Blue versus green, with the people walking in between deciding which floor they wanted to go to. That's been an iconic image for years now. But this year, things are different. Nintendo is basically taking Microsoft's place, and they're going to be across from Sony. And it's just... there's some unfortunate ramifications of this whole thing, but also fortunate for other people. It depends on like how you view this. So, Microsoft this year, in the E3 floor plans that we've seen, they're going to have about 15,000 square feet of space on the floor. Now that's relatively small. That's definitely a lot smaller than they usually do, and way smaller than both Sony and Nintendo will be doing. So Sony's got the biggest amount of floor space. They've allocated about 37,000 square feet of space. Nintendo has allocated about 31,000 square feet of space. Microsoft, 15,000. That's right, Microsoft Xbox has half of the floor space allocated compared to Nintendo. That's a big difference compared to previous years. But that has some unfortunate ramifications as part of it. That's a bad sign of something. So we know for a fact that just like every year, Sony's probably going to come out and announce games like crazy. They're probably going to show off and announce a lot of exclusive games. They're going to show off some previously announced exclusive games that aren't out yet, but they want to probably show some footage. And we're probably going to get some details on maybe the future of the PlayStation 4 Pro. Who knows, we might see something about like a PlayStation 4 Pro Slim. I don't really know. But I don't think that'll happen just yet. But it could happen in the future. I don't see that happening at this year's E3. Basically, Sony's going to be announcing a bunch of games. Nintendo, on the other hand, they are probably not going to be talking about hardware, but they, too, are going to be talking about games. I mean, they allocated 31,000 square feet of space. That's a lot of space. They're going to be showing... and they're not announcing hardware, so what else could they be doing? They're going to be showing off games, and they might have the new 2DS XL on display. I don't know. But... it's going to be a Switch-focused E3, and we're going to see a lot of floor space open for games. So Sony and Nintendo are the ones showing off most of their games. And Microsoft, we know what they're doing this year is the Scorpio. They're going to be announcing and showing off the Xbox Scorpio. We're going to see what it looks like. We're going to get the file name, the price, the release date, all that juicy stuff. But based on the square footage they have available, it seems to me like Microsoft is not going to be showing off any games at all, any exclusive games at all, and if they are, it's going to be maybe one or two games, possibly ones we already know of. That is not good. We know that the biggest problem with the Xbox One this generation, you know, besides all the stuff that happened in the beginning, is the fact that compared to Sony and even Nintendo, at least not Nintendo at the end of the Wii U's life cycle, they have not been getting exclusive games on their system. So basically you had a system that ran games in an inferior way to the PlayStation 4 and had way less games to choose from exclusive-wise. I mean, the last one I can think of that got released for the Xbox One was Halo Wars 2. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that came out a while ago, and it's not even that big of a game. And what did we get before that? Like, not really much. I mean, the Xbox One's been suffering, and that's been one of the biggest criticisms, is the fact that it hasn't been getting exclusive games. And if you even count the PC, the fact that every Xbox One game is coming to PC, basically the Xbox One has no exclusives. But if we're just talking in the console space right now, and we're going to consider those exclusives, even though I really don't, because they're multi-platform games, they're on multiple platforms, make any argument you want, they're multi-plats, they're just not releasing that many differentiators to get people to want to buy an Xbox. And I think that Microsoft this year, with just showing off the Scorpio, I think they're under the impression that having that strong console is going to be the differentiator that gets people to buy the system, and I just don't think that's going to be the case. See, what I think happened is that Microsoft put all of their development dollars into the Scorpio and did not put any dollars into game studios or game development, and that's why we've been seeing a big drought on the Xbox One for the past few years. Basically, no real games announced for it. They're basically just relying on third-party games. We're not even getting that many second-party games, and a lot of those third-party and second-party games are getting canceled or delayed. Like, look what happened to Scalebound. I was so excited for Scalebound, and it got canceled. What a shame. I mean, we all know Microsoft is so terrible with working with developers and basically wrecks studios every time they try to work with them, so kind of saw that coming. But it's still a shame. We're getting either no announcements, and old announcements are getting canceled and delayed. And then we're seeing at this E3 that they have 15,000 square footage of space. That's less than half of what Sony has, and even less than half than what Nintendo has. So we're basically getting almost a confirmation here that Microsoft is not announcing more games for their system, and that's a shame. See, the problem with relying on more power in a system, especially in a console, to try to drive the sales of a system is that typically people who buy consoles are looking for the best bang for the buck. And we know for a fact that the Scorpio is going to be more expensive than even the PlayStation 4 Pro, at least $100, if not more. And just based on every previous console generation, almost always, when a console is more expensive, people flock to the cheaper one. Look what happened in the beginning of this generation, when the Xbox One and PS4 were released. I mean, sure, there was other things that made the PS4 come out ahead, but the biggest one, you have to remember that the majority of people who buy game consoles are casuals and don't pay attention to E3 or marketing or anything like that. Most people in the beginning of the generation didn't know that Microsoft had those stupid DRM policies they were about to put in. That didn't apply to most people. No, what people saw was that the PlayStation 4 was $400 and the Xbox One was $500. Oh, which one's cheaper? I'm going to get the PlayStation 4. That was why the PlayStation 4 was dominating the Xbox One in the beginning there, because of the fact that it was cheaper. And the same thing happens to this. The majority of system sales, no matter what system it is from casuals. And they're going to look at the Scorpio, see that it's $500 to $600, and then they're going to look at the cheaper Xbox One S and the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 4 Pro, and by now, word of mouth has gotten around by a lot of people, even to most casuals, that the PlayStation 4 is the superior system with more games, so they're going to go for the PlayStation 4 that's cheaper. And if we're going to go by 4K marketing or anything like that, we know that Sony is going to market the hell out of the PS4 Pro being a dynamic 4K system, which to the casual person basically is going to make them think that the Xbox Scorpio and PlayStation 4 are basically the same thing in terms of capability, but look, one's way cheaper. Sony's probably going to drop the price. So they can't really rely on that super powerful system in order to drive sales. And keep in mind, I'm not trying to shit-talk the Scorpio. I'm actually buying one. I do want to fill it in that gap on my TV shelf underneath my TV there. I put that picture up on Twitter and in previous videos. I want to fill that gap in, and I like collecting tech. I want to see what this thing can do, and so I'm going to be buying one. I'm excited. But the truth is, Microsoft cannot rely on the Scorpio to increase their Xbox One sales, and it looks to me like based on E3, they're not going to be announcing games. This E3 is pretty much going to be a Sony versus Nintendo, which hasn't happened since the 90s. Pretty much ever since Xbox came out, Nintendo's been kind of falling behind in terms of game announcements and E3 floor space. So yeah, we're seeing that shift in the industry. You know what I noticed, and I don't even remember if I brought this up in a previous video or not. I don't keep like notes or anything, especially when I'm in a car like this. I've noticed that Microsoft is going through the same third-generation curse that just about every game console manufacturer has gone through. In fact, I can't even think of in terms of the major console manufacturers, I can't think of anyone who hasn't experienced it. So we'll look at Nintendo to start with. They, when it came time for their third generation, the N64, after the NES and Super Nintendo, they lost most of their third-party support with the N64 and got thrashed by the PlayStation, who was a newcomer. So their third generation wasn't amazing. PlayStation's third generation, the PlayStation 3, they did well in the end. They ended up selling more units, but in the beginning there, for that first, until like 2010, Sony was struggling. The PlayStation 3 was not selling well. So that was the beginning, that was their third generation curse. Sega, their third generation was the Sega Master System, if you don't count like the SG-1000 or anything like that. If we went Sega Master System, Sega Genesis, both pretty successful systems. Here comes the Sega Master System, which sold like shit. I mean, it pretty much just sold well in Japan and was received well in Japan, but it only topped out around 10 million units. That was even far less than what the N64 did. It was pretty pathetic. And now we get to Microsoft. Their first generation wasn't amazing, but they were having to share the generation. It was their first time, and they were having to share with the PlayStation 2, which they were just destroying absolutely everybody. So I'll give them a pass on that. Their first generation was decent. The Xbox 360, they did great, you know, over 80 million units. And then the third generation comes along, They close a lot of studios. They're not releasing games. Their system is getting poorly received by people with actual brains that aren't fanboys. It's happening to Microsoft too. And I don't know if, like, I just have this bad feeling in my head that the Scorpio is Microsoft's swan song. We may see game development ramp up after the Scorpio's released because they can start putting development dollars into games instead of a system. But I just have a bad feeling that the Scorpio is their swan song and they're trying to switch over to a platform like Windows, hence why they're doing Play Anywhere. We may see a console generation after this, but keep in mind, they're releasing the Scorpio now and treating it as a pretty major release despite it having to be compatible with Xbox One games. That's going to be on the market as their main system for at least a few years. I expect at least another 4 years or so, 4 or 5 years with the Scorpio. Who knows at this point? If they release a console after this, who knows how well they can do, but I just don't see a good future for the Xbox One at this point. I think it's going to pretty much just slowly fizzle out. Microsoft's going to put the least amount of money into it that they possibly can, you know, besides releasing the Scorpio, hoping that that can pick their sales back up. But the third generation curse hit Microsoft just like it hit everybody else, and this E3 is not showing good signs for them. Nintendo and Sony pretty much took over at this point. Well, Sony's always they've always been ahead of, you know, everyone else ever since they started. But yeah, those are my thoughts. I want you to give me your thoughts. You know, let me know in the comments what you think about this whole situation. What do you see happening to the future of the Xbox One? What do you think of these E3 floor plans? I mean, what do you expect to see from all the game console manufacturers at E3 this year? And yeah, I'm sorry for not releasing too many videos. I've got more coming up. I've actually got a Dragon Ball video coming up because there's a topic I want to talk about. Going to be hopefully collaborating with someone on YouTube who I definitely respect for that type of content. And you'll be seeing more content from me come next month. I'll be going hopefully harder into this YouTube channel. Again, it's more of a hobby for me, but you'll see more videos, I promise. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys next time.